Once upon a time, people decided that the world was made of matter, and only matter. Just pieces of physical stuff that you can touch, and everything else is explained by how the stuff works. Now, materialism in today's day and age is hard to support, knowing what we know about relativity, about quantum physics, because if you really start to look at these little pieces of matter, they turn into energy and probability. Practically speaking, however, a lot of people still tend to at least somewhat believe in the tenets of materialism. And there is one connotation of the belief in materialism that I believe has gone mostly unnoticed, and that I feel is my sacred duty to illuminate. This is one, call it a side effect of materialism. And what I'm talking about is nihilism. My point is that materialism also carries with it nihilism. Even though it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to do so necessarily, because materialism is purely the belief in the idea that everything's made up of matter. It doesn't say anything about purpose, about meaning, about feelings, about faith. It's just stuff's matter, and that's it. But practically speaking, this is what I've noticed, is that when people believe in materialism, or rather the belief in materialism itself will lead to a sense of nihilism. In the sense that if it is true that everything is made up of matter and matter only, and that even our very consciousness and awareness and entire human experience is a product of chance and chaotic randomness, which is how it is posited in the theory of materialism, that consciousness is a side product, is an accidental side product of complex webs of matter interacting. That means that there is no purpose to any of it, that there is no meaning to any of it, and that there is no reason for any of it. Therefore, nothing matters, which is nihilism. Which is also ironic, because materialism says that everything is matter. So how can everything be matter, but nothing matter? Now, what I've seen people say about meaning is that they'll believe in materialism, but they'll still create their own meaning, and it's like, no, but you can still be optimistic and create your own meaning and have a fulfilling life like that. But I just don't really buy it. I think they're just creating a thought because they want it to be true, but do they deep down really believe it? I don't think so. But I'm not gonna tell them, because that's for them to figure out. Um, but what's also related to it very much is the fact that people have this innate desire for meaning, for joy, for love, for connection. And this conflicts with the theory of materialism, which says that by default everything is just matter and there is no and these things that we want, the joy and the meaning that we seek, is just a spontaneous process out of nothing. And therefore it kind of invalidates this very innate human search for meaning. So that is why I believe that materialism is kind of like a vessel for nihilism. And I also believe that we should investigate why everyone does have this innate desire for meaning and for joy, which you could consider spiritual things, spiritual values. Because joy is irrelevant to matter. If you have a brick, it doesn't care if it's made with joy, if it's laid with joy, or with anything like that. This actually makes me think, because I've been approaching materialism from a purely philosophical perspective, but now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it makes more sense to approach it from an emotional perspective. To say that, oh, this theory was posited not because this was a purely philosophical insight that people had in the 1600s, but that instead this was a philosophical insight that people had in the 1600s that was based on their emotional needs and their emotional coping mechanisms, which is kind of interesting if you think about it. Because then materialism makes sense, because it shuts down emotion, because it shuts down all these things like joy and love. And if you have been very hurt, and if you've been feeling very desperate and hopeless and lost and sad and confused, and then you have this idea, oh, maybe it's all just materialism, everything just matters, therefore nothing matters, that can be a relief. And the same applies to nihilism. And frankly, now that I think about it this way, this makes more sense to me. It makes more sense to me that these philosophies like materialism and nihilism are emotional coping mechanisms rather than like pure insights into the nature of reality. Because life was brutal in the past when they came up with these theories. Like life in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s. It was tough shit. And life still is very hard. But it would explain why people feel need to what is the emotional basis for these philosophical ideas? Yeah. Yeah, that's it. See you next time, and peace.